Welcome, Spirit Bus 33, episode number 14. Thank you for being here. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on this journey with me. I hope there is something helpful for you in this episode. A little bit of a different turn today is geez, like what the fuck is going on here on Earth is how I just kind of felt guided to start it out. Like the election year, 2024, it's like we're living in this like really bad reality TV show. And the world like through the eyes of media, aka propaganda in many ways, is just like literally one shitstorm. I mean, literal storm, brought to you by cloud seeding, but one storm after another, in so many different directions. And everyone's kind of experiencing similar storms and similar things, and then all of this unique, experience as well. So I was trying to kind of put this into perspective of how do we get through, time periods like this, and how do we keep ourselves healthy? So I'm thinking of, everyone's going to have a unique process for this, but I invite you to do some visualization with me on this. So first visualize, it doesn't matter if you're right, left, whatever it is, but visualize all of the chaos, fear, division. I know there's like a lot of people, hurt and people losing their home, all sorts of things, like just visualizing it in this, storm like mass, and take that and put that out in front of you and kind of give it a description in your mind. Is it swirling? My when I put mine in front of me, it's very chaotic. There's some flies swirling around, like they're feeding off the bullshit. There's some, it smells probably a little of my visualization. It's a little stinky in there. There's a lot of people arguing over what reality is right, or what should be done. There's a lot of confusion in there. So it's really, a chaotic energy. And so, visualize what it looks like for you. This is more of what's going on a macro level in the world, is this mass. When you step into it too, it's muddy, like your shoes get a little stuck. So it's a muddy kind of chaotic thing, and that's out in front of you. And then I invite you to think of other parts of your reality to put in front of you as well. So it may be, creative expressions. It might be your art. That can be out in front of you, and maybe that's a sparkly, maybe that feels like really joyful. Maybe there's some sunlight in that. Maybe there's a little worry, some imposter syndrome, something in there. Maybe it's not all, rainbows and butterflies, but, kind of feel what that looks like, give it a description, visualize that. And then there's another one of maybe your connections with other people, maybe another one of, maybe nature, whatever your earth experience entails. Try to divide it up into these different masses floating in front of you. And you're stepping out, back and back and back away, and observing them from a safe distance. And then really sit with yourself and see if there's anything else there that's not already identified in one of those masses. So if you're sitting there and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my gosh, I have this bill due," or, there's some kind of like worry about money, that can be maybe its own mass. Maybe that one is a mixture, of the two, some cloudiness and then some sparkliness for the abundance that you're creating. Again, this is all a unique visualization tool. When you keep backing up, what you're left with then is you and your consciousness. And well, first, again, one other thing though is there's automatic thoughts though. Any negative automatic thoughts, those need to go out into a mass. Whatever mass, or maybe it could just be its own mass, depending on the negative thoughts that you have. If it's something of, I'm not worthy, those, maybe that's its own mass you can identify. This might even be good to like write out or draw, depending on what you need to utilize this for your healing journey. After you have everything out, including your automatic negative thoughts, what you're left with is your consciousness, intentional thought, and downloads, so to speak. And I'm using the word download because that's what I resonate with. Is I will get information what feels like is downloaded into me. Other people might feel like it's their intuition, your internal guidance system, but you're left with that. And you're standing there and you're observing these big masses in front of you. And I think as time goes on, we recognize more and more masses, and maybe we even break a couple apart because they need to be divided, whatever the case is. You can get, as creative as you'd like with it. Now, as you're standing there visualizing everything out in front of you, is you have the free will to go and step into any of those masses at any time intentionally. Is you can intentionally jump right in to the mud of fear, of chaos, with intention. At any time you can visit there. You are not stuck outside. You are free to go in. The trick is, though, is that you may not be free to come out if you don't have the tools to bring yourself out of it. And that gets even, I would say, it gets more concerning if you're getting drawn in without your permission. And that's something that we really have to look at here. This earth experience, it got some tricky tricksters, energy that's pretty tricky in all sorts of different ways. I'll use, let's just use the news. It doesn't matter what side. Is that if you watch the news, most of the time you're going to have a back-to-back, this is some shit that's going on, some fear-based stuff. The world is dangerous. This is bad. Floods in Dubai, the presidential election, smearing one another, something, a murder, something horrible after. You might get a sliver of something beautiful, but it's really just a small part. They're just sprinkling it in. The majority of it is really difficult. So if you watch that and because you want to stay informed, your intentions are good, you may be sucked in without your permission because you're doing this with good, intent, but you're sucked in to whatever the programming is feeding you. And so that is a very, precarious situation because you don't know what's coming next. This isn't something that you already have the manuscript on and you're like, okay, I am, informed and I know what I'm going to see. No, is that you don't know. And that becomes almost like the thrill of like what's coming on the news next. Like what stories will they have? Well, fear is catchy. Another example, if you are in the reality of, let's just say, social media, of TikTok, if you are in that reality and you're just kind of scrolling through the For You page, all of a sudden you kind of take a dark turn that you're maybe in, CERN, adrenochrome, another, I don't know, some kind of fear-based hole, the dark corners, of TikTok, and it catches your attention of like what you need to know right now, or the secret that they've been keeping from you. It draws you in because you feel like I need to know this to survive or to be okay or to feel, and it drags you right into this fear-based shitstorm. And so we have to be very, very careful of when we are getting pulled in without our permission. And so this calls for some really, really strong warrior-like practices and tools in place. Because if you're, again, visualize all those different things in front of you, you want to be able to intentionally go in at times, for whatever your reasoning is, with some type of harness connected to your grounded, centered, safe space there, a pulley system of sorts, so that when you go in intentionally, you do not get stuck there and then live there because you didn't set yourself up to be able to pull yourself out. Even some of the other, let's say, more pleasant masses floating in front of you. Is that the creative expression? Is that you could go deep into your creative expression or deep into your work or whatever it is and be neglecting other parts of your life that are important because you're not able to get out. The pulley system isn't there, or the practices haven't been developed. Maybe the awareness isn't there. So take a little bit of time and think about what masses are you getting stuck in? It's important to know these things because what we think about expands. What we think about has an emotion to it, and that expands. So if we are worried about money, for example, and we are in that mass intentionally or not intentionally, and we continue to think about it, that will expand and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then before you know it, a day or days or months or however long goes by, and that is your reality. With tools in place and practices in place, you can step out. It can still be happening and you can step out of it and notice that there are other possibilities for you to intentionally step into. You can also notice what else is drawing you in. And there can be a little bit more balance there. Now, these pulleys, to kind of talk about it in a little bit more of a centered or a little bit more of a, that's the word, concrete way, is Everyone is unique in this. Is what works for me might not work for you. I'm a very visual person, so I can picture all of this visually, and I can do visualization techniques to step out of it, to return with some breathing. For myself, body work is really important. If I'm really stuck in something, going for a walk, exercising, stretching, maybe journaling, the different ways of getting out of it to get to a place where it's not all consuming. And then I have the ability to make an informed decision on if I would like to enter it again. And the reason why this is so important is because we do not need to live in these spaces. It's not healthy to be there all the time. Thinking about what worry, fear, even jealousy, maybe frustration, anger, thinking about what that feels like in your body when you're experiencing that, like what it does to your nervous system, the stress elevating in your body. The research shows the link to medical conditions, to autoimmune deficient, like so many different things. So it is vital that we are only intentionally visiting spaces like that with curiosity and a safety net, or a pulley system to get out. It's vital for our health and for our future. And it may not feel like there is any negative consequences right now. And that's because we've been a lot of times really conditioned. I'll use again, let's just use the news again for an example, is you might be thinking like, well, I can watch the news. It doesn't bother me. I would have to politely disagree. Is like, if you're watching that and it doesn't bother you, you're not experiencing any emotions, you're not experiencing anything. It's just, as if someone was talking about planting flowers. Somebody being murdered is just another one of those. I would have to say that your subconscious and your body, your nervous system is experiencing that, even if cognitively you have masked or been conditioned in some, in from seeing it over and over in our movies and, everything in our experience that has desensitized you from it. I would argue that you are still experiencing it, and it will come out in different ways. It may come out in overeating, other addictions, irritability towards other people, getting caught in other worry loops that with similar emotions, your health, medical conditions. So I think that we need to be extremely protective of our energy and where we spend it at. Because that is what we're doing, is we are choosing to spend the energy that we have in these different storms, these different masses. Of course, like, use your own terminology of what works for you when you're visualizing it. If we think about that we only have a certain amount of life force, of energy left for this human experience, none of us know when our experience is going to be over. And this is such an interesting, it's a taboo thing to talk about, that this is temporary. Other cultures in different countries, I think are more advanced in this than we are in the United States. Is we do everything we can to avoid talking about it, to avoid aging, to avoid, all of it as if it's not going to happen. So we have a limited amount of energy, and we can decide what we want to experience here. Again, it does not mean that you have to put your head in the sand, or that you're like, I'm only going to experience positive storms. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you know what you're doing. You're doing it with intention, and you have a safety precaution to get yourself out. You have your mind, body, belief system practices in place so that you are not stuck in a storm. And after we start having these in place, because this is how it starts, is we have zero awareness that we're even stuck in storms. No awareness of it. In fact, the visualization of these different storms for some listening might not make a lot of sense. They may not be speaking the same language as me right now. There's zero awareness that they're separate from any of it, or that they have the capability to be. And then stage 2 is that they start to gain some awareness, or we start to gain it. And this is not like I'm better than, oh, no. We're all at stage 1 in some things. So this is not, there's no hierarchy to this. This is just a journey and a way of describing it. Stage 2, you start to gain awareness of, oh shit, like I've been sitting, in this mud pit for a while and haven't even tried to get myself out. Or, I have been consumed, by this particular reality on, the dark web, or, I've been consumed by this nefarious line of thinking, and that's taking up most of my energy. So you start having awareness, whatever direction it is. I'm worrying too much about money. So, and then the stage 3 is you start prepping to make a change. You start to gain, okay, how do I get myself out of it? What tools do I need so that I'm not living in that space? So that I can start feeling emotions that are healthier for my nervous system. So I can start taking care of my, my body or my mind. You start, prepping. And then stage 4 is you go into the action steps. And stage 5 is you maintain it. So if you are recognizing right now that you have zero tools to get yourself out of the storm, is I recommend that you either start working with somebody who can help you create a good system to get out, or if you're not aligned with working with someone, that you start doing your own research and you start practicing some of the things that you learn. The preparation stage, to me, can be one of the most trickiest stages for people, is because they can start gathering information and then get almost addicted to the gathering of information and have a hard time putting it to use. So if you are gathering information from, that's what you're spending your time doing, that can be a whole nother storm in itself. And I mean, it may feel good. It might be a swirly, sparkly, feel good, joyous type of thing, and that's great. But as soon as something involuntarily draws you back in to the other emotions that you are working on, you're not going to have the tools in place to get yourself out if you have not practiced them. And a storm will come. That's the one thing that we can guarantee here in this earth experience, is that we're not going to get through this without some really hard shit happening. All of us as a collective, we have that in common. We have a lot of things in common. Regardless of our belief systems, is we have a lot in common. So I invite you to, if you're on that stage 3 and you're doing the actions, or you're doing the research, is to start applying them. Is having practices that you do daily with intention for certain things. Is maybe I do yoga for this. I have an exercise routine for this. I journal for this. I walk in nature for this. Know why you're doing it. And then have practices and tools in place for when I get stuck in the worry loop, or when I get stuck in the mud of the devastation of this world, or when I, get stuck in uncomfortable emotions of jealousy or fear, or whatever it might be, this is what I do. It may be that you have a limit on, I allow myself to live there, to sit in it for X amount of time, and then I get out. And I would say that, that's good in the beginning, is to make sure that you're not avoiding, but most of us, when we talk about these things, we've already been in it enough. We don't really need to be in it if we get really real. Now, it's different if you're intentionally stepping into it to problem solve, decision make, those type of things. But most of these things, like, we don't need to roll around in it. We know what the fuck that feels like. We don't need to do that. We don't need to. It's not going to harm us, to choose a different mass or storm to step into. We can still learn from the other parts, from the other storms. All right, let me sum this up, is that we all have difficult, swirling pockets of emotions that are in front of us. We do not have to live there. We can step out and observe them and step into other things. We will get drawn in, and then we need to protect our energy. Warning signs that you are likely in it and don't realize it is if you are so consumed with them. So, consumed in anger, hatred, you are likely stuck in one of those storms and it's time to step out. Just give yourself a little break. If you feel aligned with being angry with people, by all means, you can step back in at any time, but give yourself a break. You deserve it. Give your nervous system a break. Your heart. is that obviously it shows that you care so much, that you have a lot of emotions. You're a deep feeling person. You're caring about what you believe to be right, or, what the destruction, you want it to be better. Great. But it all starts if we start healing ourselves first. And then that healed energy can ripple out. And in our small little pockets of the world, we can really make a difference. Going to go ahead and draw a card. This is going to do July 1st because I just randomly am doing this episode today. Was not intentional, was just, again, I was stepping out of the storms. And to me, it was just a download. Just, wherever it came from, here we go. So the first card here is beautiful. It's existence. We are all having our own experience here. Like, we're seeing things differently than everyone else. For some people, that can feel overwhelming. But again, then you're stepping into the storm of overwhelm, of perhaps, that you don't have the tools in place to handle such a huge experience. And I'm going to invite you to strengthen your relationship with yourself so that you feel like you do. Because this is wild and beautiful. There's such a beautiful component to this experience, is we're all here. No matter what you believe about, if the earth is round, flat, an enclosed system, a realm, whatever it doesn't even matter, is that we're all here having this experience at the same time, but unique. We don't need to argue over the experience. We really need to unite. It's a pretty trippy thing. And it'd be cool if we could have conversations in a loving way of like, whoa, what is your existence like? Interesting. Totally different than mine, like on these more like connected levels with one another. Just pull another card here, and it's an understanding. So I think at a deep level is that we can have the understanding that people see things different than we do. And that's okay. And if it's so completely different, we don't have to step into their storm. All right. Well, I hope that this was helpful for those listening. And I really appreciate, again, very grateful that you took this journey with me. Have a great week.